says in terms of the Quran to establish the prayer, for prayer restrains you and keeps you from evil behavior. The Prophet said, if a man were to bathe himself in a stream 5 times a day, how much dirt could be left? They say of no significant amount. He said that is likened unto prayer. When a man decides to be clean, when he decides to reach another level, when he decides to transcend and go beyond the Constitution and Western philosophy, then he turns back into that which the Creator has given to him. But the problem with Africans is that they so American. They so American. They're 150% American, and you don't have to be but 100 to be American. They believe nothing existed before the Constitution, no truth, no justice, that there was nothing before the Constitution. But the Constitution itself is one of the things that has been used to enslave people. When you look at the Constitution, you find out there are inherent contradictions when it is measured against universal law. There are contradictions in the Constitution. The Constitution is not a perfect document. This is why you've got amendments. Anything you amend means it's not perfect. So therefore, when the African was introduced into this country, he was introduced not as a human, but 3/5 as a human. That's the language of the Constitution. In that Bill of Rights, they talk about certain things that are not even real. They talk about equality, as if that's real. They allude to all men being created equal. Allah says in Quran that verily man exists in degrees, at different levels. So when it gets down to our level, we're thinking that everybody is supposed to be equal. If that were the case, if it were a universal truth, then everybody could jump just as high as Michael Jordan. Everybody could just run just as fast as the next person. No. That's a fallacy. It's not true. All men are not created equal. The equality exists in the opportunity that Allah gives us to utilize the guidance that He gave us. They talk about freedom as if that is something that is true. When Allah says in Quran that verily He has created man to worship Him, He has created him as a slave. We are imprisoned by the laws in which Allah has set into motion. All of us are born, we live, and we die. You can't get out of that. Which means that you're in a state of submission, whether you like it or not, whether you admit it or not. We all submit, willingly or unwillingly. Even the man who says he does not believe in God, that's his belief. But he submits. He submits. Because when death comes, there's no way he can convince death that he don't believe enough not to die. All right. Of what the laws that are advocated, the advocacy of certain laws in the Constitution serve to distort reality. Freedom. What is freedom? If man could really be free, he could be free enough not to die. He could be free enough to fly if it was an absolutism. But the people who frame the Constitution and who benefit from it, they understand that this is not real. So although they say that you have a freedom of speech, then later down the line they write that you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. Because they understand there are restrictions even to what they give to you to hold on to as a premium. So we go around telling we're trying to be free. The movement is about freedom. Nah. The movement is about the right to worship Allah as He said He is to be worshipped. It is in this sense that we begin to refine the whole consciousness of struggle. It is in this sense that we begin to talk about being successful in struggle. So the Prophet says that prayer 5 times a day begins to bring about that reality of what is required. Again, prayer is something that it is not arbitrary. It is a way. This is why Allah sent the messengers, to teach you the way to do things. So it would not be arbitrary. A man will not think that by standing on his head that he would be worshiping the Creator in the way the Creator says he is to be worshipped. So He sent the guides. He sent the guides throughout history, from the Prophet Adam to the Prophet Muhammad, to give the instructions how to pray. Fasting. Allah says He has commanded fasting upon us, as He has commanded upon those before us, that we may learn self-restraint, that we may learn taqaqqum, that we may learn to guard against evil. You might say, what benefit is fasting in these days? Again, the Prophet, peace and blessings on him, pointed out concerning fasting, he says that fasting has a dual purpose. So not only is it a physical thing, but it is a spiritual thing as well. It is in this sense that we begin to understand the benefits of fasting, and fasting in the way it has to be done, not starvation, but fasting. We began to look and we see not abroad anymore, but here it has become evident that famine is upon mankind. The plague of famine has now become evident in this country. There's shortage. Given to the fact that because of the economic system, the greed, and the mismanagement of technology, that food in a very short time will be scarce. They found out that there's certain areas that were once agriculturally productive that they can't grow anymore because of the industrial waste and pollution, because of the insecticides and pesticides that they put into the earth. The earth has been rendered impotent. They find because of the weather change as a result of his misunderstanding of technology and of disturbing the atmosphere until it has caused a change in the weather. So therefore, when the crops used to be ripe in California, now the freeze comes in and destroys it. And the crops used to be ripe in Florida. Now the water comes in and ravishes it, or the heat destroys it, or the insect hordes begin to eat it up. Famine. So who is better prepared to survive famine? A man who has to eat 3 meals a day, or a man who prepares in 30 days. So the Creator begins to prepare you. Say, when the signs of the time become evident, then you have to begin to make preparations to deal with that level of struggle. The prophet says, in terms of the believer eats in one intestine, say the non-believer eats in 7. And even the food that we eat, we have to become critical as to what is it that you're eating. Why are they successful in controlling people? They're successful because in terms of the food, there are certain controlling agents that they put into the food. You begin to look at man, and you look in terms of, you see the way that they have changed their whole sense of masculinity, that has redefined masculinity into many of the things that were feminine have now become used by the men. You talk about the rise of homosexuality. It might have something to do with the food that the animals that are slaughtered. What happens is that what is given to the animal is estrogen to increase his yield, his weight, and to change the reproductive cycle of the animal. So what happens when the animal is slaughtered and it's brought to you on the table? The estrogen is not removed as a result of cooking. Estrogen is a female hormone. So what happens is when you begin to eat that, it begins to alter your whole sense of reality, and the men become soft. In Puerto Rico a few years ago, they observed concerning the young girls at 8 years old that had begun to develop bosoms, and the menstrual cycles had begun at 8. They were questioning as to why, what was happening. So somebody said it might be related to the food. So they withheld the pork in which they were eating. And they found out the condition had reversed itself, which spoke directly to the fact that it was in the food chain. How are they so effective in controlling people? Because if they distort your reality, if you have no sense of reality, then you're not prepared to deal with real things. So they put it in the food. And you go about and you're thinking things that are not real or real. The sorcerers work upon you. You turn to Hollywood to find out what time it is. You read the newspaper as if they have some insight in terms of what's going on. Again, the Quran is not history, it's news. It tells you everything. Prophecy tells you what time you live.